Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Marion Nestle is a retired professor of nutrition, food studies, and public health. She is also an author, columnist, and from 1986 to 88, she was a senior nutrition policy advisor in the Department of Health and Human Services and editor of the 1988 Surgeon General's Report on Nutrition and Health. Her website is foodpolitics.com. Welcome to the program, Marion.
Oh, glad to be here.
Well, we are very excited. We've kind of shared it with some of our friends that you were going to be on the show, and they're like, we have to hear this interview. So we're very excited to have you on. So what exactly is food politics?
Oh, I get asked that all the time. Everything about food is political. It's more than $1 trillion a year in sales in the United States, and there's advice about what to eat and what not to eat, and arguments about how food is produced. The COVID-19 pandemic has pointed up problems in the food system where workers in meatpacking plants are getting sick, but the owners of the meatpacking plants want them to work anyway. That's politics.
That's definitely very interesting. Now, speaking of COVID-19, people are now getting to growing their own food. What is the virus doing to the American food habits and just in general? How is this kind of a turning point or making a difference?
Well, it depends on who you are. As with everything else in America, people are very, very different, and the virus is having a different effect on people depending on where they live and how much money they have and whether they have a job that is still going on. If you're newly unemployed on unemployment benefits, on food stamps, then you're having a big problem taking care of your food needs. If you're retired as I am and you're in a safe place, you're growing your own food and having a wonderful time with it.
And as you said earlier, it all depends on where you're at, because if we look back, and there's even some tribes now, their biggest goal in life is to wake up, kill something, bring back, feed the tribe, and everybody's happy. We look at food in a very different way based on the culture that we're in, and sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. But yeah, if you're the one, it's all about, are you making the money or are you spending the money to, that type of thing when it comes to the food?
Well, like everything else, it depends on what your particular cultural experience is with food. And these days, how much money you have and whether you have an income is critically important. There are 40 million people on unemployment insurance. There's 65 million people who are on, 37 million people who are on, we're getting SNAP benefits, with huge waiting lists for all of these things, waiting lists at food banks, for, long lines at food banks for people to get food. I mean, this is a very complicated time right now, with people having very, very different experiences.
That's definitely very true. Now, you've written a few books, and your most recent book is Unsavory Truth, How Food Companies Skew the Science of What We Eat. What was your inspiration about writing this book, and what would you say that is something notable that readers would get from it?
Well, the book is about how food companies pay for research that gives them results that they could use in advertising. And what we know about industry-sponsored research, we know from the drug industry or from the tobacco industry, that the people who do the research don't really realize that they're being influenced by the money. That occurs at some kind of unconscious levels, and they don't really understand or they don't feel that they're skewing their results in any way. But the observation is, over and over again, that industry-sponsored research almost invariably comes out with results that favor the sponsor's interest. So if you know that a food company has paid for research, you can pretty well predict what the results of the research study will be. And I got interested in that actually quite a long time ago, but my previous book was Soda Politics. And I wrote about how the soda industry, Coca-Cola in particular, was funding research in its own interest to demonstrate that Coca-Cola had nothing to do with obesity, that any research that showed that sugar-sweetened beverages have anything to do with obesity was so badly flawed you didn't have to pay attention to it, and so forth. But it wasn't just soda companies that were doing that. Lots of companies were doing that. I started collecting examples on my website and finally figured out that there was a book in that.
Well, that's definitely, that's another thing is that I don't think people realize how a lot of these studies are skewed because of who's funding them. And even to this day, like different polls that go out and, they're specific, like we've asked this many people, but they don't say we've asked this many people of this income in this neighborhood versus some sort of broader range. So that's very interesting.
So most people have heard about the 2,000 calories a day standard that we all are supposed to follow. Where did the ideal for this come from? Where was the foundation that somebody said, hey, this seems like a good number, let's go with that?
Well, the 2,000 calorie a day standard is a ballpark figure that nobody should take very literally. It was based on actual studies that looked at how many calories people were consuming, but they were based on studies that people were reporting as consumed, and those tend to underestimate actual consumption. But even when the studies are done more carefully, they show that it's really only a few hundred calories off. Men probably consume on average about 2,500 a day, and women somewhere around 22. But it was too complicated to do food labels based on 2,300 calories a day, so they chose 2,000 as kind of a compromise. Nobody should take it very seriously.
That's very interesting. Now there's a lot of conflicting information on vitamin D, whether you should take it through some sort of supplement, whether it's best to get it through the sun, do you get it through dairy? How would you say is the best way for people to get the vitamin D and have the best absorption of it for use for their bodies?
Well, first of all, vitamin D is not a vitamin, it's a hormone. And it's a hormone that is synthesized in a series of steps from sunlight on skin. So by far, without question, the best way to get it is to get out in the sun. And, let the sun shine on you for a while, and your vitamin D will be taken care of unless you live in a place where there isn't any sun, or you have very, very dark skin, or you don't go outside very much. But really, sunshine is the best way to do this. Otherwise, it's put into dairy foods and added to other kinds of foods. But it's not really something that we eat. It's something that we get from sunlight. I think of it as hormone replacement therapy, and I'm not really in favor of supplements. But I live in a place where there's sunshine in the summer at least.
Well, Marion, we greatly appreciate the time you've provided for us. Not only Holly and myself, we've learned a lot, as well as our listeners from across the country. How can people find out more about you? How can they get a hold of these books that you've been mentioning?
Well, everything in my life is on foodpolitics.com, where I file posts almost every day, and there's information about my books and my speaking and everything else I do. And anything you want to know, it's all there.
Well, it's been a great opportunity to speak with you, and we appreciate your time and informing us of things that many of us may not have been fully aware was going on behind the scenes.
Great. Happy to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.